Good morning, children. So, today let us read the very first chapter of civics, which is the Union Legislature. And before going into this Union Legislature, so let us understand from where these structures have been created. So, the Constitution has given provisions to form three fundamental organs for the government to function, which are nothing but the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. So these three are the main organs that are provisioned by the constitution to run the government in country like India. So when you have gone through the previous slide, as we have discussed that there are three main organs of the government, and among that let us today begin with the first organ of the government, which is the legislature. So the union legislature is the organ of the government which helps in making laws. And in this chapter, under union legislature, we are going to study about the union parliament. See, the union parliament mainly functions for law making for the country. Hence, so the union legislature in this chapter covers about the union parliament and the Lok Sabha, the parliamentary procedures, the Speaker of Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha, the powers and functions of the both houses, and their relationship and differences. So the union legislature includes the union parliament, where we are going to study all these things like Lok Sabha, parliamentary procedures, the Speaker, Rajya Sabha, and all. And as you can see in the picture, that is our the it is the building where the lawmaking process happens for the country. So the union legislature includes the parliament where both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are present in that same building which you are seeing in the slide. So as we have discussed earlier that the Indian legislature works in the form of Indian parliament. So let us see, is this legislature or lawmaking organ, are there any categories in it, or what kind of categories are there, and what do you think, what kind of system did India might have adapted? So let us see in this slide about that information. So the legislature is generally classified as the bicameral legislature and unicameral legislature. See, the words itself clearly tells us that bi means two and uni means single. So here the word cameral is nothing but the chambers or the house. So any country which has having two houses is called bicameral legislature. A perfect example for that is in India, and unicameral. So unicameral legislative countries shall have only one house, and example United Kingdom. So these are the two categories of legislature which are there, and among these two kinds of legislature, India has adopted bicameral system of legislature. So let us see why India has adopted this bicameral legislature, and why do you think our constitutional makers have incorporated this kind of legislation in our constitution. The picture which you are seeing in this slide is the overview of the parliament building, where we have our both houses of legislature, namely Rajya Sabha, which is nothing but the Council of States, and Lok Sabha, which is the House of People. As in our parliamentary system, we have these two houses. We call our legislature as bicameral legislature, or our parliament as bicameral parliament. So there are definitely some reasons why India has adopted this bicameral legislature. So the major reason is, for a country like India, which is very vast and with many number of states, so it requires the representation of all these states and the representation of all these sections of people in the union legislature. So to make all these states and the people representatives in union lawmaking, so the constitutional makers have thought about having another house or another chamber which together makes laws. And with bicameral legislature, it is also easy to monitor the hasty decisions taken by a house of the parliament. For example, if Lok Sabha takes some hasty decisions, some decisions which can cause harm to the country or which may cause damage, at such point of time when that decision goes to the other house, there may be a chance that the members of that house will try to stop such decisions or will try to advise Lok Sabha on such hasty decisions. So in such bicameral legislature, this second house of legislature will always help to monitor, advise and guide the other house, and thus preventing causing damage to the country. And if you take unicameral legislature, this feature cannot be possible as they have only one parliament or one legislative house, and if any decision taken by that house goes wrong, the country has to suffer. So till now we have been discussing about what kind of legislature did India adopted. So after knowing that, let us see this law-making power of the government is for what purpose? The purpose is to have a proper administration, to run the administration of the country smoothly. So the parliament makes different legislatures or different laws, and if these administrative powers aren't divided, then it will cause a big problem. So the way these administrative powers are divided between a central government and state governments are generally, there are three ways of dividing this administrative powers to make. So the legislation is to run the administration smoothly, and if these administrative powers are to be divided, there are generally three different ways. One is unitary way, federal way and confederate way. See, in unitary system, all the administrative powers are kept with the central government, and the state governments has no authority to say no or to disagree with the central government. And if you take the confederate system, there with a proper agreement, the states shall be with the central government. And and there is one more called federal system of governance. Among these three, India has adopted federal system of governance. So what is this federal system of governance? So that we will see now. So a country is said to be federal if the administrative powers are divided between the central government and the state governments. So here, if if you look at the picture in the slide, which shows that the federal kind of government creates a balance between the national government or central government and the state governments. So the balance is very important for the country to progress well. Hence, this kind of governments will enable the national and state governments to function in balance. So if powers are distributed between the central government and state governments, then it helps the country to have a very good progress. And the picture speaks about the balance of by distribution of powers, the country which is actually federation of the states, it balancedly and it progress with a balance. Proceeding to understand why India has adopted federal system of governance, let us see first what is its meaning. So the word federal system represents that if the constitution of country divides all the administrative powers between the central government and the state governments, then such kind of system of governance is called federal system of governance. And the federal system of governance has certain key features or characteristics. See, the foremost important characteristic feature is, in a federal system of governance, both central and state government can exist independently, and they together derive the authority to exercise their powers from a single constitution. And the Constitution of India has thus provided us federal system of governance. That means both central and states, they derive the powers from the constitution equally, and these administrative powers help them to run the country in a very smooth manner. And the another important characteristic feature was, the central governments sometimes emerge very powerful, but they cannot dissolve the states or choose state leaders of its choice. So here we can say that the states can still remain independent and can protect their integrity. So thus this can be, this is the meaning of federal system of governance. And why do you think that India has adopted federal system of governance? As I said now, these all key characteristic features which I have said just now is helping India to remain together. The other most important thing is, we have been under the ruling of the Britishers for many long years. So at this rule, India has lost its harmony between various states or various kingdoms, whatever it is, not how it was existing in those days. There was no harmony between different units of India during the British rule, and they have completely disintegrated the Indian unitary feature. And the constitutional makers thought, as federalism is talking about the distribution of powers and making this both central and state to remain independent, this would be a good chance for the country to remain together. Hence, the constitutional makers or India has adopted federal system of governance. So this particular slide again begins with the federal meaning, and what is federal government. So which, as we have discussed, the administrative powers and its division. So along with that, the picture in this slide says the states and nation, the central government should exist together. It symbolically represents the federation or the federal spirit between central and state governments. And coming to the importance of federal setup in country like India. So with the help of federalism, we can protect our unity and integrity. See, what is the necessity? Because India is a country with many religions, many section of people, many cultures and many traditions in many forms. So this is a country with diverse features and characters, and to make such diversified country to stay together, we need federal system of governance where powers are distributed as well as they can remain supreme in their own sphere of influence. And it also helps India to save itself from separatist forces. That means people or the groups which are trying to divide and disintegrate this country cannot function actively when there is a federal system of governance, so that the country can save itself from such separatist forces. And in a federal system, usually the judiciary, that means which which safeguards the powers, generally the Supreme Court stands at the head of the judiciary and safeguards the distribution of powers. That means an independent judiciary is possible only in federal system of governance, and the Supreme Court, which is at the head of the judiciary, is primarily meant for safeguarding the distribution of the powers which were divided by constitution between central and state. So this is possible only in federal system of governance. Hence it becomes a very important point for federal system of India. after the non-federal character, flexibility of the constitution, where the central government emerged powerful by changing the provisions of the constitution. Later, let us discuss about the single citizenship. So, Indian constitution provides only single citizenship, unlike America, where a citizen from their state will have a separate citizenship and they altogether represent United States citizenship. Whereas in India, you cannot have such dual citizenship. Any member from any state can be altogether called only as Indian. So, all the people of various states and union territories, they all belong to only one country and they'll have only one citizenship. And coming to the next point, the inequality of representation in Rajya Sabha. See, the Rajya Sabha, as we have discussed, that it is another second legislative body in our bicameral legislature. It gets its representatives by indirect election from states. So let us see this indirect election and other things in our later slides. But to Rajya Sabha, the states will send its members, and these members are not equally sent from every state, because the criteria for sending members to Rajya Sabha is the number of seats allotted to each and every state depends on the population of the state. That means if a state has a larger population, they can send more number of Rajya Sabha members. So this inequality, this unequal representation in Rajya Sabha, it reveals that this representation is a non-federal character, or this Rajya Sabha strongly supports or it departs from the federal principle and it holds a unitary principle there. So it upholds unitary or it becomes a non-federal character. And also president also nominates 12 members to Rajya Sabha. That means without any federalistic nature, the president can directly nominate somebody who is good at a particular field. He can directly nominate 12 members to Rajya Sabha. Hence we can know that this unequal representation in Rajya Sabha, as well as sending 12 members directly by president or nominated by president to Rajya Sabha, deviates the federal nature and it strongly reveals the non-federal nature. And the union territories. The union territories were created when India was separated in 1947. There were different categories of states. Among them, certain areas could not exactly fit to the status of a state. Such were directly taken under the control of central government. Hence, they were called union territories. And these union territories are directly governed by the central government, and they do not enjoy any independent powers or autonomy like the other states enjoy. Hence, existence of union territories in a country like India will resemble a non-federal character. Summing up the federal and non-federal characteristics of our constitution. So let us see this picture. So in this picture, you can clearly see that Indian Parliament or Union Legislature is adapting federal setup, and in this federal setup, the central and state government will have separate set of powers, and these administrative powers are divided between them, and thus it becomes India will become a federal government. And later, if you see the features under non-federal characters, a strong central government, single constitution, and flexibility of the constitution, single citizenship, inequality of representation in Rajya Sabha, existence of union territories. These all features together contribute to non-federal characters. Now, tell me, is India truly federal in nature? Because we are talking on one side, India is having federal nature by administrative power division. On the other hand, we are saying that it is having non-federal characters. So, India has a different set of federal administration. That is, it is called quasi-federal administration. That means we do not completely take up federal characters and we don't resort or we don't completely have non-federal characters. So, Indian federal system is quasi-federal. That means some from federal and some from non-federal. So this is about the federal nature and the non-federal nature of our constitution.